Hi everyone, as I said before, thanks so much for joining today's webinar in partnership with our Affinity partner, SJL Insurance and ETI Logistics. The topic of today's webinar is Make Risk Management Work for You and Your Insurance. We'll be covering what effective management looks like, how to ensure it's followed, and the overall insurance benefits for implementing good risk management in your operation. Please use the chat function to engage with your host and ask questions, and there'll be time for a Q&A towards the end of the webinar. Most of you attending will be aware of what FORS is. However, for those that aren't, we're the UK's leading fleet accreditation scheme. We focus on road safety, operational efficiency, and environmental protection, including specific requirements on vulnerable road user safety, helps improve operational performance and demonstrates best practice. We use a tiered approach to show your accreditation level, with gold being the highest, silver intermediate, and bronze entry. And presenting today from SJL Insurance is Jake Edwards, who you just met. He is a senior insurance broker with a decade of experience in the industry. And from ETI Logistics, CEO Jeremy Richardson. Jeremy has over 27 years of experience in the transport industry and has worked with FORS previously as an auditor. So now over to you, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And what we're really going to have a conversation around today is how sort of effective risk management and things like that can then in turn affect your insurance premiums. But I think one of the big things that we need to tackle to start with is you guys will be living it. So you guys are aware of all of these different issues that we're going to discuss. But what do you think of the current issues that are being faced in the fleet industry? So feel free to pop into the chat box, anything that you think in particular that is making an issue at the moment. But a little list of things that we made. Holly, if you can just pop over to the next slide. Heidi, spot on straight away. This was the first one that we mentioned. So driver shortages is a huge issue that we've got going on at the minute, especially experienced driver shortages. We're getting quite a few newly trained drivers that are trying to come through. And it's obviously takes a little bit of time to get these guys up to speed and things like that. Another thing that we mentioned is a lot of legislation that is being put through against you guys at the moment. It's a huge issue, again, that can just be sort of spirals out of control, really. Repair costs. There's a lot of people now trying to keep these down by using sort of green parts initiatives and things like that. Employee challenges. One of the big ones that doesn't get talked about too much, it sort of ties into the one that we've got at the end. So in relation to mental health challenges and things like that, as you will all know, I'm sure that you get told by your drivers and stuff out there a lot of the time. Maybe not, because we're not very good at talking about it, really, to be honest. But with mental health and things like that, being a driver can be quite a lonely job, can be set out on your own on the road quite a lot of the time. And really, it can be one of the loneliest jobs in the world, because it's just you sat out there, you're away from your family quite a lot. We're not very good at talking about it, though. So this is something that we need to push forward more. Foreign travelling workers is a big issue that we've got at the minute. And truck technology, and obviously fuel costs. Fuel costs have been a huge one, because they've gone from being £1 a litre that we had down at in the height of COVID, and then went all the way up to £2 plus a litre. And that was for sort of myself as just driving a normal private car. So for you guys, the fluctuation must have been, well, yeah, even more for you. Jeremy, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on in that bit?
No, I think for now, in terms of risk management, thanks, Jake, by the way, for that sort of quick overview. I think it's safe to say that anyone that's involved in the logistics and haul industry for long enough is well aware of these issues. And we can all talk about knowing about them, but the challenges, right, for me, are understanding those issues, how they affect the whole industry, and how each parts of these issues that we have apply to different parts of the structure within a business, from management down to the drivers, and having the ability and the knowledge to put in practical and cost-effective solutions. So the driver shortage can be very reactive environment. If you take the need for the deliveries, they all have to happen, and as we all know, the operation tends to come first. So often hauliers, employers are struggling between having their own pools of drivers that they can rely on as employed drivers, need for agency drivers, for argument's sake, and it's how to balance that asset, if you like, that driver asset, the newly qualified driver who who can step into a business and be shaped and moulded and managed and supported. The legislation, there is a lot of it, and it's picking apart the legislation that applies to different parts of the business. Some of it's government-led, some of it's manufacturer-led, and some of it might just be, you know, internal policies and procedures that companies want for themselves, and trying to disseminate all of that can be challenging. In terms of risk management, it's trying to make those bits apply to your business in an effective way. Cost, repair costs, as we've already touched on, that they are getting costly. If we think of the technology of trucks now, it's getting worse and it's not worse, let me rephrase that. It's getting more complex with digital cameras, LED lights, for argument's sake. So those repair costs cascade into your policy renewal, and it's trying to manage that initial outlay versus the end of year premium renewal, shall we say. Employee challenges, that's tied in. We're going to kind of jump a little bit down to the mental health as well, a little bit. There's a whole host of employee challenges, going from making sure they're aware of the industry that they're working in, how they can cope with that, to what's going on at home. We'll a bit more coming on that a bit later on. Fuel costs is probably one of the biggest expenditures in the industry, which we all know about. And it's finding ways to manage fuel costs versus risk management. And it's an interesting kind of correlation for me, because they don't necessarily immediately sort of work together. But if we use truck technology, for argument's sake, that's available, and allow that to do what it's doing, that in turn can create a better driving environment, which in turn creates better fuel savings. The foreign travels, foreign workers, it doesn't matter if you're taking on or working with foreign people in your own employed pool, or whether they're visiting drivers from EU countries. There's principally communication and understanding challenges that are based around all of those.
Definitely, yeah, I think that's right. If we can just nip over to the next slide, Holly, please. Because I think what we need to is how we can use effective risk management to sort of mitigate these issues. Now, this is definitely part of Jeremy's wheelhouse, so I'll pass over to Jeremy. I understand you've just been talking, but I'll pass you over again to Jeremy, just to have a chat through how effective risk management can help mitigate the issues.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jake, and no pressure on me. So for the benefit of everybody, as Holly's already said, I've been in the industry 27 years across a wide range of sectors, and certainly if I look at my FORS audit experiences, I've carried out over 60 audits. A lot of it is can be on paper. I'm not knocking any company saying they're not doing things. A lot of companies are doing things, but sometimes I just see as a lot of it is a tick box exercise, and there are practices in place that companies need to have, of course, to help out with policies and procedures and driving better productivity forward. But it's having that end result where everything's linked in is really important. If we take the driver shortage, for example, newly qualified drivers, it is a necessity. And what we saw coming out of COVID is a lot of people didn't know what to do, so they took their HGV license. The DSA relaxed the process of how you can get your license, direct access. So we now found that guys are going from car straight to C+E, which is what we used to do in the old days. And now they're suddenly faced with driving these large vehicles, and then the employers are often faced with, well, I need the load taking product's got to be delivered, but I've got an inexperienced driver. And it's finding ways to test their knowledge, test their strengths and weaknesses, and their skill base as well, their knowledge base, and put that into a practical way so that employers can work with a driver to shape and mold them to how they want to be. There are other risks. Sometimes drivers think, oh, I've got my experience and I'll disappear again. Certainly what I see from a knowledge point of view, from the advent of CPC requirements, is that when I've been training drivers and assessing drivers, they're very knowledgeable on the technical side of it, the legislation, road rules. They're very knowledgeable on that side of it, but actually on the road, the driving road skills, that is the bit that needs to be cultivated, and that needs support from employers, in my opinion. It needs to be supported by employer and the driver, but I think also in the context of risk management and insurance, the insurance companies also need to know what the employers are doing, and there's going to be a long-term benefit, not just of getting a skilled driver, but that long-term benefit cascades through into how the insurance company engages with the employer. We've already talked about the legislation. There is a lot of it, and I often see that companies can be bombarded with policies, procedures, and legislation, and notice boards, and you get drivers coming into these environments, and they're like, well, which bit applies to me? What do I have to look out today? Which bit applies to me today? So I think It's important that companies know the legislation that governs the industry. They know how and when it applies to their particular sector, and how and when that applies to a driver. If we're taking a direct risk management of the truck itself and the potential damages, it's having the ability to manage those bits of information in bite-sized chunks so that drivers can cope with it. Ties in a little bit with the mental awareness, which we're going to talk about a bit later on. What he said about the repair costs. Just some examples that I've been working with one of my clients recently. They're going through a fleet procurement process, and one of the things that's come up is the choice of headlights, so LED or regular bulbs, and the cost difference on that is nearly £600 between for a single item on that one, or a pair, obviously. But that's a significant cost. So if you're then looking at, for example, if you are going for a fleet procurement stage, and then you're deciding on what kind of equipment you want for your fleet and what specifications you want for the future, can be any technology. In this instance, digital mirrors, for example. How do you protect that? How do you manage that investment, that asset protection, if you like, with risk management? How do you understand, go through the root causes of incidents, analysing your delivery profiles, and how that can affect the vehicle, and how that can affect, things go wrong. It's widely considered that low speed confined space impacts tend to be the most common cause of damages. Yeah. And they stack up a little bit. I'm sure, Jake, you'll have some experiences from your side.
Definitely, yeah. So it's really difficult because, like you say, with the £600, it's a lot of money stands there at £600, but then you times that by 70, 80 vehicles that some of these fleets are running. Yeah. The costs are in like tens of thousands that you're paying. And then that's when I know it's a bit of a risk management is the thing that will help mitigate these issues. And what sort of our job as an insurer our job as a broker and getting you the right insurance policy is ensuring that if the risk management then doesn't take into account the precedent and doesn't work, because we can never say 100% that these things won't happen, then that's our job to be there to sort of back you guys up in the event of any accidents that you may have. But yeah, carry on, Jeremy. Sorry, I was just jumping in there.
No, that's absolutely fine. And I think what you said, we can't predict accidents, or can we predict accidents? I think we can actually. I think if companies take the time to analyse their delivery profiles, for argument's sake, common causes is one driver having 5 accidents at different places, or are 5 drivers having 1 accident at the same place? So there's some work to be done there. What I see often when I see hauliers and I speak with them and I engage with my clients is like, yeah, I'll do it. I haven't got time to do it. And it's bridging that gap between taking steps up front to see your end result at year end and the ongoing management of these risks. That's often what I see as well. Linking in with the fuel, which kind of links in with the repair costs. We know it's a high spend. If you look at modern truck technology now, we'll take it in the context of we're moving forward and ever advancing technology versus, shall we say, an older fleet. The trucks themselves these days are virtually making up their own and what they need to do in terms of optimal use of power and fuel on any given road at any given time. And you couple with that things like lane departure, brake assist, distance control. All of these things go towards producing a very efficient vehicle on the road. But then you've got the driver behind the wheel, and if the driver is not fully okay with those technologies, and certainly I've seen it from an onboarding process when new fleets come on board, the driver trainer from the supplier doesn't necessarily have the time. It's keeping it going that's the key thing, in my opinion. And then letting the driver work with the technology, that's a key thing for me, understanding that technology and allowing the truck to do its thing. And by default, the driver himself will be in a more relaxed state, less stress, less tension in the actual driving process itself. I mean, there's enough going on the roads. If crazy drivers, deliveries, time deliveries, all those pressures, we all know about that. But you've got to put the driver behind the wheel in any given moment, and it's that's where it's at. Is what is the driver doing at any given moment, and it's getting understanding behind that, and encouraging the driver to work with those technology, I think, is a really important step forward in managing that risk, and also then managing fuel, shall we say. It kind of, if you do one, the other one should fall into place in a natural order. Foreign drivers. There's been a lot of talk about foreign drivers, whether we, and I'm not going to get down that whether it's right or wrong, but we have them in the industry, and we've got to work with what we have. And again, it's the pressures of understanding. If I look at some basic induction processes that a lot of companies have, pages and pages of paperwork, and by 4 hours they've kind of glazed over and they're just happily signing everything off to say, yeah, I understand it. But then the next thing is, well, I've gone down a narrow road because I didn't understand, imperial measurements versus metric, shall we say, on road signage. So there's a lot of work and understanding and testing of knowledge on an onboarding process, and I'm sure a lot of companies do have these onboarding processes. Of course they do,
Yeah.
but it's pushing it through and really finding out what does the driver actually know, and that's for your employed drivers. There's a lot of sort of migrant drivers that have come to the UK, when that's absolutely fine. I think we're quite happy to have them in the UK because there is a driver shortage. But also then out on the road, it's just being in mindful of your environment. If I look at my background of an LGV instructor and teaching people to be instructors themselves, it's about situational awareness as well. And if you are on the road, it's not just about looking at what you're seeing out on the road. It's then being mindful of foreign drivers, then asking the question, well, what do they know about their situation and my situation, and allowing them some time and space, for example. So the context of foreign drivers actually stretches all countries, I think, and all knowledge bases. They might be lost, they might be struggling, trying to find where they're going. It's the same as if a UK haulier does EU trips. The driver's in a foreign country, you're preoccupied with trying to find where you're going and trying to find what your delivery point is. And it could be a high pressure situation, I think. So trying to bring knowledge into the driver and understand what they know will allow steps to be taken to improve communications and improve knowledge over a period of time, and regular testing as well. I think
100%. 100%, yeah.
So that's kind of some of the perspectives that I have from my experiences from past. And one of the things we want to talk about now, which Jake has touched on, and it's a big thing that Jake and I got into talking about when we became acquainted and started working together, is the mental health side of it. And I'm sure you've all got your own experiences of people who are struggling. We saw it, the client I was working for at the time, directly off the back of COVID with lockdown. It was, Jake, you've already identified it can be quite an isolating environment to work in at the best of times. And then with lockdown, certainly the sector I was in, we were classed as frontline logistics because it was food supply chain. But then you couldn't even speak to anybody or go anywhere, and it was even more isolating. And what we saw from incidents and events and just kind of behavioural patterns was some people were really, really struggling. And so having access to there's some really good charities. That campaign against living miserably is a charity I personally particularly support, and we've helped some people with that. It's just understanding, getting behind what's going on with people's lives. I mean, we have some very powerful drivers in our lives, no pun intended with that one, in terms of, our relationships, our jobs, our money, living. All of these things are very powerful and influential things that everybody has going on in their lives. And now you're asking people to step into another pressure situation, which is motorists, pressure deliveries, time deliveries.
Yeah.
It has an effect, and I think, I don't know how that cascades through on the insurance side of it, because then you start analysing the damages and finding out what's gone on, and often, the driver's saying, well, I wasn't paying attention. So
yeah, I think it really does sort of hamper this sort of insurance side of things. There's quite a few insurers out there now that will, in fact, even just sort of put you in front of some situations when they can supply mental health help throughout that. Even working for a broker, as I say, like with us working at SJL, we have our own mental health practitioner that comes in once a month, book an hour's worth of time with her and spend a bit of time. She's brilliant. Her name's Carrie Workman, and she's brilliant. So it happens in my sort of industry, in working with insurance. It doesn't feel like there's other elements of sort of jobs out there that have got to that level yet. I don't think. I think there's still a bit of work to do. But talking about insurance does lead us quite nicely on then to the next bit, which is, if we can just go to the next slide there, Holly, which is how insurers view risk management. So a lot of the stuff then that Jeremy's just spoken about really sort of gets lost in translation between you might still do them as a haulier. There might still be a lot of these things that go on, but it sort of gets lost in translation then to the broker and then on to the underwriter. So in short, insurers love risk management. It's one of their favourite things that they'll be sort of seeing going on, just because it helps mitigate losses that they could potentially have, that could come towards them. But insurers view it as a critical factor when underwriting policies and assessing overall risks associated with fleet operations. Risk management practices in the fleet industry can significantly impact insurance premiums, coverage options, and overall insurability of the fleet. So what they tend to do, so a few different options of how it can help with risk management, and as long as the big thing is that it's explained correctly to the broker. So discussing the importance with people like myself of risk management and different types of risk management that you take, we then need to pass that information on, because then it gives us a better understanding of the risk as a whole. There can be such a big difference. A lot of people see it out there, oh yeah, well, we're just doing some fleet insurance. But there's such a big difference from a guy doing heavy haulage, working on 78 ton, 125 ton vehicles that are out there, all the way down to someone just running a courier business. Like, there can be there's such a big difference out there in relation to it. So we need to know all the ins and outs of it as it goes. We need to discuss the importance of dealing with a broker that has experience in the area. So a broker that has experience working with fleet and knows the right questions to ask you to get the right answers that we can then pass forward, which will then help with insurance premiums and the perception of the risk as a whole. Insurers too frequently out there, there's a lot of brokers, and it's not bad mouthing anyone because everyone's working in the same industry with myself, but there's a lot of brokers out there that think it's acceptable to just put together a presentation. Here's a list of vehicles. This is how much they paid last year, and here's their claims listed. Send it out to an insurer. 9 times out of 10, an insurer will just say, oh, well, we'll decline to quote it because there's not enough information. There's nothing there that we need to know. We need to know all the ins and outs of your business. We need to know how your business runs and everything, really, from different things that you may be delivering or different goods that may be in the back of the vehicle, the driver profiles that you've got and things like that. They make a big difference to insurers. So from an insurer's point of view, risk management literally can't be overstated. It is the biggest thing that they will use as a whole. Because then we can see, as I mentioned with Jeremy before, that we can never say that 100% that an accident won't happen. But an insurer would much prefer to see one accident that potentially might have cost a little bit more on a claims experience than they would seeing 20 small accidents that equated to a bit less of a cost. For example, one £50,000 claim would probably hinder you less on insurance premiums than 20 £1,000 claims, because the frequency is much higher, and the option for them to be then turn into a big accident would come down from, well, it's more likely to happen because you're having more accidents. So insurers then request risk management improvements as well along the way. So they'll see what's going on with risk management and they say, do you know what, we'd prefer it if you did a bit of this, we'd prefer it if you did a bit of that. Me and Jeremy have spoke at length before about geofencing in the industry at the minute, which wasn't really something that I knew before until I'd started having a good conversation with Jeremy about it. And that sort of thing, throwing that out into an insurer, they can see that. They'll see where the accidents and things like that have happened because it's where they've been reported. And like Jeremy mentioned before, if you've got 5 different drivers having an accident in one spot, then that spot needs to be flagged up as a high risk area and an area that can be of where there'll be accidents or an area of danger, really. But most importantly, as I say, and we can't hit this home enough, Jeremy's just spoke about it, risk management needs to be not just a documented tick box exercise process. It can't be that. It really is pointless doing it. If you're just going to do it as a tick box exercise, then you may as well just not do any. because the real benefits come from following through with risk management and working with it as a whole and making sure that that process goes all the way through from CEOs of companies all the way down through whoever any employee that is working at the company needs to be all brought into the same ethos. Which, yeah.
So just want to quickly touch on, just cut across that, Jay. Just quickly on the risk manager side of it, just in the context of this slide we've got going here. Whoever the risk manager is, internal or external, shall we say, it's taking that knowledge of what that individual haulier and how they operate and bringing that across to the broker. Like you said, you love risk management, but you need to, the broker also needs to understand what risk management is, and they also need to understand, they need to know what those steps are. You said, what was it? And certainly some of the clients that I've worked with, that you and I have engaged on, Jake, is like, well, here's our fleet list, and it's like, oh, but we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this, and that's when the engagement came in. And you touched on the geofencing as an example. We know that one of my clients, they've got high risk delivery points, so let's take some steps. We geofenced it. It flags an alert to the driver, extra caution required here. So it doesn't matter who the driver is, experienced or inexperienced in that context, there's a pre-alert for it. So the risk manager, whoever that is, really needs to, I think, have that knowledge, that industry in-depth knowledge, regardless, like you said, whether it's couriers or heavy haulage and everything in between, and look at it and say, well, I understand what that is, I understand what those vehicles do, and I understand what the likely risks are for that, and then, like you said, go to the broker and say, well, actually, you can anticipate this and this.
Yeah.
What can we do about it?
And then how do you think, Jeremy, because that actually leads us really nicely onto the next slide then. So how do we ensure that risk management is followed through sort of from top to bottom? How do we ensure that that's pushed through?
Well, you kind of touched on most of it anyway, but it's just kind of reiterating it for me, and certainly the work that we're kind of working on at the moment. If risk management to be fully effective, it needs regular focus. It's no good just looking at the end of the year and say, well, what happened last year? And we had these accidents. It's taking, it's keeping on it, whether you have a monthly review or quarterly review internally is fine, or externally with whoever you bring in. The policies and procedures are great. If we look at the FORS policies and procedures, we know we have to have them. How far do they really permeate through to the end user? So let's say the driver, toolbox talks are great, but are they just, we've done it as a tick box exercise, or are we really getting a message across that driver's going to take with them and connect to the business as well? Do the managers sign off accident reports and costings? Does the driver know what the costing is? Does the driver aware of the downtime? It won't stop these accidents happening necessarily, but by creating this whole understanding of what risk management is, and who's involved with it, can change people's perceptions and attitudes of that. It's not just the driver when their vehicle's gone, it's the downtime and the man hours associated with it, in terms of the follow-up, the paperwork, that has a dollar value attached to it, and at some point someone's going to have to pay for that. So trying to reduce all that is critical. It ties in what you're looking at, Jake, is the risk management side of it.
Definitely.
But there should also be an incentive and reward, shall we say, and objectives. And I think the objective, we're talking about in the context of you, Jake, is getting the broker really on board with the haulier and say, well, actually, we understand what your business is, and we want to work with you, and we would like to see these steps in place, and we want to see that you're demonstrating that you're this risk management has regular focus, and you're demonstrating it because I can see you've done this in this quarter, and we've reviewed it from the previous quarter, to the end goal of ultimately, I suppose, we're looking at saving some money. That's what it's all about. And engaging with the broker to say, well, actually, we can see you've done this year, and we can see that your risk is managed in a way that actually we like to see that. This is the end result of it. And I think it's important that from the broker point of view, that the broker then has the confidence and the knowledge, the technical knowledge, to go back to the haulier and say, well, actually, we know that your industry is X, Y, and Z, so we would like to see this of you as well. So real two-way engagement, I think, is really, really important on that one.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, we've spoken about it before, but I think a lot of it works with being proactive, not reactive. So ensuring that ensuring, because we can't really guarantee that we're going to, but trying to be ahead of the game and not reacting to an event once it's happened. If we can put the right procedures and steps in place to start with, then we can mitigate the fact that the risk won't happen in the end. We can, as I've mentioned a few times, we could never guarantee it's not going to happen, but we can mitigate the risk that we've got there. Holly, if we could then flick to the next slide on there, just to have a chat about the insurance and the benefits that you get from excellent risk management. So one of the biggest things that everyone will want to be learning about really is reduced insurance costs. If your risk management is on point, then the insurers will look at that favourably, looking to then reduce insurance costs. It's what we all want to be there for at the end of the day. To improve safety for obviously drivers, staff, members of the public, if risk management is of a good level, then all of those risks, again, slightly mitigated. Minimises downtime. Jeremy's just spoke about downtime. There is a dollar cost to it. If we can make that dollar cost turn into a cents cost instead, then even better. Then we can, obviously it's better for everyone in the situation. Enhanced reputation. Now, this seems like it wouldn't really be a big issue, but the enhanced reputation, well, I say wouldn't be a big issue. I mean, from a broker point of view, obviously it's a big issue how members of the public and how your business is perceived. But from an insurance point of view, there's only a certain amount of underwriters and fleet insurers and things like that out there. And I can guarantee you, when a big risk moves from one place to the next, or if one risk has a big claim, everyone will know about it. It gets talked about. It gets talked about knocked around offices and things like that. I can guarantee you that happens. So it's more about enhancing the reputation. When I say enhanced reputation, I don't mean in the way of sort of members of the public. I mean from an insurance point of view. The reputation is quite, key for an insurer. Legal compliance, as we've mentioned before, there is a lot of legislation and things like that that we have to go through nowadays, but it's just ensuring we're compliant across the way and making sure that filters throughout the company. Lower maintenance costs, better driver behaviour and fuel efficiency. And really, it's lower claims costs, which then the whole point of it would be lower claims costs, which then equals lower premiums and lower excesses from the insurer's point of view. The insurers then will look at it and offer greater flexibility, allowing sort of more business flexibility and earning potential. Because at the end of the day, the insurer shouldn't have to, and it does happen, but you shouldn't have to change your business to fit what an insurer wants you to do. It should be the other way around. The insurer needs to be flexible enough that they can discuss with you what they think you need for doing as next steps, but they also need to be flexible enough for you to go back to them and say, no, well, I'm not doing that. This is what we're going to be doing, which is fine. This is why we've been working with FORS and working so closely. We've done a lot of surveys with fleet managers and different FORS operators throughout the sort of process that we've got to now when we've developed a product. But it's really, we've spoken to everyone and really drilled down into what people are looking to find out from their insurance and what they're looking to get from their insurance. So the obvious one that we've just spoken about is reduced premiums. So it's something that we're negotiating at the moment and that we have got in our arsenal is the ability to go to an insurer and say, look, we're looking for a discount. These guys are FORS members. They're showing great risk management. They're showing that they can move forward and are looking to, they're not just looking to chip a claim in every 10 minutes, they're looking to do what they can to stop that happening. We also have been offering award-winning claim support. So recently here at SJL, we've just won Commercial Broker of the Year claims team. So we've got our own in-house claims team. A lot of brokers don't have that. So it's something that we sort of pride ourselves upon. And as I say, they are award-winning as well. We've managed to negotiate a lot of work in relation to sort of reduced excesses against the standard market offering. Now, I'm not saying that if you come to me and tell me you've got a £250 excess, I'll get it for 200. That's not how it works, but it's sort of reduced versus the standard market offerings that we've got on there. What we have got, and it touches back onto when we've been talking about risk management there, it touches back onto the new drivers and the driver shortages that we've had going on. We've also been able to negotiate very flexible driving profiles. So be that age, so we can get pretty much at the minute, as long as they've got relevant experience, and we're going to take your sort of face values on it. So as long as they've got relevant experience and that they've been doing the job correctly, and you believe that they are good enough to be able to do this, we can get all the way down to sort of any driver over 21 on these sort of things. So there's a lot that can be done. What the insurers are also looking to offer, because this is how strongly they feel about risk management, they're looking to provide bursaries towards different hauliers that are out there. So not on every single policy, but if they feel that there's an element of risk management improvements that needs to happen, then they can provide a financial bursary towards yourself to pay towards those risk management procedures. So really, the benefits for implementing the risk management are, from an insurance point of view, it's key. There isn't anything more important out there. That it's the main thing that we look at when we're looking to put a risk. If we saw someone just driving down the road, even just in normal day-to-day life, you can see people that are risk averse, and you can see people that, well, there's risk takers out there in the world that you see, and they're driving along and they've either got no headlights on and it's 7 o'clock in the night time. These people, even though I know it's a silly sort of small example, switching your lights on makes you at less risk. And there's some people out there that don't see it like that though. But yeah, I think that really is most of the stuff that we wanted to cover today. So if there is any additional questions, feel free to chuck them in the box. We'll stay on for sort of 10 minutes now, just to see if there's anyone going to pop a question in. And also, Holly, if you can just nip to the next slide, where it's got our, if you need any quotes for insurance or anything like that, feel free to drop us an email.
Right, thanks for that, Jake.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge in today's webinar. Are there any comments in the chat box or any questions?
Not yet, no.
I've not seen any, no.
No worries. That's all good. Might wait a couple of more seconds just to double check.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. If there aren't any questions, there's a post-webinar survey. Oh, we've got one question actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Heidi's asked how financial bursaries work. So I'll jump in on that. So essentially what they do is a lot of them will work on a percentage basis. So for example, a client that me and Jeremy have both worked with, the option that they gave for the financial bursary was for any risk management procedures. So be that camera installations, be that you wanted to send the drivers out on some training, then what they would do is pay up to 50, they'd give you an amount. So in this example, it was £12,500. So they would give you up to an amount, but they would only cover up to 50% of the cost, which happens a lot. So you can go out and get, if you went out and got £12,000 worth of cameras, then they'd pay you £6,000 up to it. They only pay up to 50% of there. But it's a really good thing to be taken advantage of, because it's money for free, really. It's money to make your business safer for free.
That's one thing. So that's one of the things that one of my client was particularly interested in, Jake. When we first got acquainted, and I was doing the risk management for that particular client, and how we came to work together. You put forward the financial bursary, and the question was, what is there? How does it work? And it gave us a financial kind of outlet, if you like, to purchase equipment or enhancements on any part of the risk management that my client needed, to say, well, actually, that this pot of money is there. You can make a financial contribution towards it, and make use of that. And that is one of those proactive steps that then engaging with the clients, working with you guys to say, well, actually, this is one of those proactive steps, and there's actually money available for it. Yeah. And that's then rolled out and it's a very visible, if it's in terms of purchasing camera equipment, shall we say, for argument's sake, it's a very visible and an immediate effective solution.
Mm-hmm. And from an insurance point of view, they're happy to do that. They're happy to put that money towards it, because in their mind, everyone knows, everyone that's sat in there talking about this now, the whole point of most people's businesses out there, I've never met a businessman that doesn't want to make any money for their business. So, which is standard that we need to be given to. From an insurer's point of view, the more money that they can put in towards bursaries and things like that, then the less they're going to have to pay out usually, because their risk management is better. There's also another question that Cora's just popped in relation to the fact that they've had 2 drivers recently on driver assessor course. Is this something that we can speak to insurers about, that we have in place when inducting new drivers to be assessed? 100%. So if you've got your own in-house driver assessor, so depending on what they do, so if they're going out and they're driving around and they are jumping in with the drivers before they're being assessed, then they're being let out on the road in the trucks and things like that, and they're following them around and seeing what's going on. It looks really good. From an insurer's point of view, having your in-house driver assessors is big. Like, it's a big thing to talk about. And if you do want to have a chat about it in relation to how to sort of put that towards your insurers, what we're also offering at SJL, we're offering a free, no obligation, it's a insurance health check. So if you need us to have a look through, and we can talk about risk management, and we can talk about different bits and pieces that you should be telling your insurer about, then feel free to let me know, and either I'll pop out and see you, or we'll set up a Zoom conversation, or I'll just give you a call and we can just have a chat about it. There's a lot of stuff that we can put together, and I can either help you with getting an insurance quote, or we can also help, as I say, with the consultation, just to have a chat through.
Can I just pick up on the assessors course? That's a really interesting point for Cora, who's put that in there. And it's just a general kind of a view from me and how it can tie in. So from a risk management point of view, speaking with some of my clients, you say, well, what do you do with your drivers? And at some point, fleets will go to a certain size where they've got scope to bring the driver assessors in, and they provide a very valuable tool in assessing the driver. And I think having good quality driver assessors is a really important link in the managing of the risk management from top to bottom. I spoke about it earlier on. Everyone's got to be on board, and the driver assessor is in a prime position to take the information from a senior point of view perspective, shall we say, and cascade that through into driver perspective, not just from a cost point of view, but from a knowledge point of view. And there's a couple of interesting things on this one, because I've dealt with this in the past quite a lot of driver trainers. They'll either do an RTITB or a DSA assessor course or something like that, or even just an internal qualified assessors course. A lot of debate about the caliber of the people that are on these assessor courses, but to me it doesn't matter. It's the willingness that there is an assessor there that's really important. But just for you, Jake, a question. So the bursary, is that something that could fund potentially assessor courses, because they're not the cheapest in the world? Is that something that will go towards that? I'm just throwing that out there, not to put you on the spot, but in the context of risk management, that could be an important step.
Definitely, yeah. So I think it's a question that we'd have to ask, but I can't see why not. I can't see why driver assessor courses wouldn't be able to be something that's put on there, because we've got, essentially, they've said to us, any training needs that you may have, we can put money towards anything that is going to help mitigate risk, which in this situation, that's what I assume is going to do. So from the insurer's point of view, they'll be looking at that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely.
And that's where the whole risk management process that we're focusing on, and where we all come in with this, Jake, and you and I, is looking at the haulage companies, the transport, and saying, well, what are you doing? What steps do you have? And by the way, have you considered this and this? And I just wanted to touch on something earlier on. I perhaps just lost it a little bit for the benefit of everybody. Is that this whole risk management process, that the end result's got to be beneficial, and what in an ideal world, because a lot of people just see, oh, it's an upfront cost. And the upfront cost is a very long distance away from your policy renewal. So you want to be getting the reduction at the end of it for your investment, or break even at the very least. So it's either cost neutral or it's actually a reduction on that one. And that's one of the things that's it's a hard thing to get past some transport companies, is because they'll just see the here and now, well, this has happened this week, or that's happened that week, and I'm going to react to that. It gets back to that reactive environment that we're working in, and it's having the ability to take your risk management procedures and put that into the business and make it work, so that your here and now steps become part of your normal everyday. That end result at the end, which when you come in, Jake, you're looking at your renewal and saying, well, actually, we can see we've done all of this, and this is the benefit.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that when we're talking from an insurer point of view, dealing with any of these sort of things, it's not going to be a 5-minute conversation. We need to put a little bit of time aside so that we can work together, work as a haulier and work with myself as a broker, and go from there. And sort of we can get that information that's put across that we need it to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Jane Warner has messaged. I think she just messaged to me privately. Yeah, that's fine, Jane. She asked me to look for a quote for you guys. Yeah, no problem at all. I'll get your email off Holly once we're done. I'll drop you an email over. So yeah, no worries. I think that's everything that we've got.
Yeah.
Thank you both again.
Oh,
we actually have another.
hold on, one more question. Yeah, that's all right, no problem. So Darren said, does the frequency of agency drivers being used ever get taken into consideration? As within the industry, common theme seems to be more accidents happen when with agency drivers behind the wheel for multiple reasons, such as inflammability of the vehicle and route in the area. Short answer, yes, it does make a difference in relation to insurance. It depends really. So it does tend to make a difference if you're using loads of different agencies. But again, it's all about painting a picture for the insurer to have a look at. If you're going to multiple different agencies and you're getting loads of different drivers from everywhere, and you've got a big mix of different drivers that are going to be driving for you, then yeah, it probably will make a difference to the premium. But if you use one driver agency that you get all of the drivers from, and they use one pool of drivers that have been working in the industry, dependent on experience and things like that, and have been working in the industry for a long time, then there's no reason why that should negatively affect your insurance.
That's an interesting point. Let's just pick up on that with the agency drivers. I've seen it a lot with my current client. We've got a probably on 90 drivers. I'd say it's about a 35-75 ratio of employed versus agency. So the higher proportion is agency. But we treat the onboarding process exactly the same. And I often see the onboarding process is there's a clear separation between, well, you're employed, so you're going to have more of an investment in what's going on. And I understand the rationale behind that, because you're going to get out what you put in. And as you said on this question here, the agency is a quick fix. It's like in and out, and it's very ad hoc. It's for a single day. I think that working with your agency to share that onboarding process is a really crucial step. That's something that I've done with one of my clients as well. We've actually shared all of our onboarding process in advance with agencies, so that they can have a better chance of becoming familiar with the types of load and the work that you do.
Yeah, definitely. That makes more sense, because it's if them drivers are, if you're pulling them into your onboarding process, then it helps, because you're onboarding them in the same way as you would anyone else. It's not treated any differently. It should be the same.
And the risk management side of it, then you have continuity of your risk management. Then there isn't a separation of, well, that person's getting that and that person's getting that. For risk management, from my perspective, to be effective, you have to, like I said, you have to be on it regular, but you have to have continuity in what you're doing as well. And that's a really important step. And it's having a look at your clients and saying, well, what are you doing? Where can we achieve a base continuity, shall we say, because some inductions may take 4 or 5 hours, and you might need to get someone out on the road quickly for, say, within an hour. So how can you achieve that balance of continuity, so that you strike that balance of reducing your risk because it's an unknown quantity versus getting your delivery done?
Definitely. The end of the day, the delivery being done is the end goal, isn't it? That has to be done. So we understand that there's a lot of different ways and bits and pieces. But yeah, so thanks for that one. Cheers for that, Darren. As I say, any other questions, if there's anybody else wants to pop any in the chat, pop them in now. If not, and you think about something once we're finished off here, as I say, our email address is on the end there, or you can email me personally. So my email address is just j.edwards@sjlins.com. .co.uk, sorry, that did better. So yeah, it'd be better if I actually gave you my real email address. I'd probably get a few more of you speaking to me. So yeah, that's fine. Drop us an email if you need anything. And I'm not too sure. So Holly will probably be able to answer that last question.
Yes, definitely. I'll circulate the recording and I'll send a follow-up email to everyone. So yeah, thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Jake and Jeremy, for hosting today's webinar.
Thank you.
There's a really short survey at the end. It takes about 20 seconds just so we can gauge how it went and what we can improve on for next time.
Perfect.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully it's been informative.
Everyone.